Let's take some questions from the audience. Neil wrote in saying, "Hey, David, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from failure in life?" I have a very specific story, and I don't know if I've told this story before on the show, but when I was younger and worked at Circuit City, I lived at home. I was in high school, then I was my first year at college. So I basically had no expenses whatsoever. So I was basically saving all of my money. I had a car, so I paid for, insurance and gas and whatever else. And I would go out every once in a while, but I basically didn't spend any money. So I was saving all my money. And somehow, I don't remember exactly how, through the internet, through some kind of like investor message board thing, I got in touch with someone who wanted to raise some investment money for their business. And I don't even want to get into the specifics of what kind of business it was. Completely legal, normal business that involved the creation of and sale of a product, right? A physical product.
Do you think it was one of those spam messages, or was it
No,
someone
no, no.
directly reaching out to you?
It wasn't directly reaching out to me, but it was someone who was directly sort of soliciting investors, which, by the way, I later found out general solicitations of investors are not legal, but I didn't know that at the time. I think I was like 19 years old or something like that. And I thought, hey, I've heard about people investing in stuff. I should get in touch. I've saved some money and I could invest. This sounds really good. So I reached out to the person. It was a real person. I talked to the person. I traveled to where the person was located and met with them. And I said, you know what? I'm going to invest in this business. At the time, I knew nothing about valuation of a business. I was a 19-year-old kid. I knew nothing about how to calculate the potential return on an investment. And I got it in my head that it was a good idea to invest what at the time was a significant amount of money for me for a 4% stake in the business, thinking, wow, if this business explodes, imagine what it would be like to own 4% of, I was imagining some really big business where 4%, it would be insane to own 4% of such a big business. And of course, the numbers didn't add up, right? The numbers I was thinking of as to how much this business was worth and could be worth, and therefore what my 4% might be worth, none of it made sense because I was a 19-year-old who didn't know anything, right? Obviously. Yeah. I invested the money. I think it lasted for about 10 to 12 months, during which the person in charge of the business would tell me, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we're going to make these sales and those sales. And I was just too naive to realize that none of it made sense. Even if the things that I was being told were going to be done succeeded, it wasn't going to make my 4% worth anything significant in terms of, in context with the amount that I invested. And I lost all the money.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that that is not the way to go about doing this type of thing. Of course, subsequently, I got an MBA. I learned more formally how you value businesses and went through the investment process with the David Pakman Show in terms of securing investment money. And I now realize more than ever, number one, how naive and uninformed I was at the time. It was an expensive lesson, but a very important lesson that I will never forget.
Yeah, I think another one of those lessons there is if something seems too good to be true, it often kind of is.
And it absolutely was.
And, do your preparation. But, it's a better lesson to learn when you're 19 and investing a relatively small amount of money compared to now.
Right.
As if, you're a little bit older.
Right. It's an amount of money that then was a lot,
yeah.
But it didn't have the repercussions that it would have if I lost an equivalent amount of money now when I actually have financial responsibilities in life. So it was much better to learn the lesson then. And I still hear from people who are older and they say, I'm about to invest in this or that. And my alarms go off thinking back to this. And I try to tell them, you do what you want. Let me just tell you this story because it sounds like you're thinking about it in a similar way. And I don't want what happened to me to happen to you. You've got responsibilities. Some of these people have mortgages or kids or whatever. And I learned a lot. Any story that comes to mind for you?
Well, seeing this wonderful picture of someone falling off their bicycle, I remember in high school I wanted to learn how to longboard with some of my friends.
Yeah.
And I would just take on these hills that were just way too challenging for me, and I would be going at a speed of maybe like 25 miles per hour. On the second day I was learning to do it. And I got to a point where I was getting the wobbles really bad, going back and forth, and just kind of panicking. My mind told me to stand up as straight as I possibly could, which was a horrible thing because really you're supposed to like lower your center of gravity and bend your knees. And I fell quite horribly and was scraped up a bit. So the lesson that I took away for that in life is when you're riding on a longboard, you should bend your knees.
Yes, a good lesson. I had a similar wobbly thing when I used to have a motorcycle.
Really?
And it started to get a little bit wet outside. And I think it was about, again, interestingly, similar to the investment story, 18 or 19 at the time. And I hit a bump. And when you hit a bump, I came down and my handlebars were slightly turned.
Yeah.
So right when I hit, they start sort of doing a figure 8 motion, which is actually turning me in my chair as I say this. And it was the most unsafe feeling moment I had on the motorcycle. And
it's
very
terrifying.
quickly I decided, I think I'm done. I got rid of it. And it's so fun to ride a motorcycle, but it just felt very, very dangerous at the time.